Welcome to the GED Social Studies test prep from ultimateged.com. In this video, we'll show you the kinds of questions you can expect on the GED Social Studies test, based on the official guide. Let's get you ready to pass with confidence. Below is a renowned recruitment poster featuring Uncle Sam, created by the artist James Montgomery Flagg in 1917 during World War I. Why might this poster be considered propaganda instead of just information? This question is a great way to learn how to spot bias and propaganda in visual messages. A bias shows a one-sided opinion, while propaganda uses emotional or persuasive techniques to influence how people think or act. So let's take a look at the poster. The poster shows Uncle Sam, a symbol of the United States, pointing directly at the viewer. He has a serious expression and wears a red, white, and blue outfit with stars on his hat resembling the American flag. The bold text below him says, "I want you for U.S. Army, nearest recruiting station." The visual message the poster conveys is one-sided. It encourages people to join the Army, but it does not show the risks involved or alternatives. This is a bias. The poster uses strong emotion and direct language to make people feel like they must join. The pointing of the finger, the stern look. The bold statement, "I want you for U.S. Army," below the symbolic figure, Uncle Sam. This makes it a propaganda because it tries to influence people's actions, not just give facts. Now let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, it only lists places to enlist. That's not correct. The poster doesn't focus on listing places. It focuses on recruiting. This is evident in its bold statement, "I want you for U.S. Army." Option B says, it includes quotes from soldiers. That's incorrect. The poster has no quotes. Option C says, it tries to influence people emotionally and visually. That's correct. The Uncle Sam poster is designed to grab attention and stir emotions. The serious expression, the pointing finger, and the direct message, "I want you," make the viewer feel personally called to act. This is not just neutral information. It's meant to persuade and motivate people to join the Army. A propaganda. Option D says, it presents the pros and cons of joining the Army. That's incorrect. Pros and cons imply that it shows the good side and bad side, a balanced message. But the poster presents only one side, to join the Army now. So the correct answer is C. It tries to influence people emotionally and visually. Before we move on to the next question, please encourage us to post more videos and help more students pass by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Use the excerpt and graph to answer the following questions. The 13th Amendment, 1865, Section 1 states, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction." What best summarizes the main idea of Section 1 of the 13th Amendment? This is a great example of a main idea question, which is a major skill tested on the GED Social Studies exam. You'll often need to read short passages from historical documents, laws, or speeches, and figure out the central point being made. Let's read what the 13th Amendment actually says. "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States." Let's put that in simple terms. This means slavery and forced labor are not allowed in the United States, except when someone has been convicted of a crime. So the main idea here is slavery and involuntary servitude are banned unless as punishment for a crime. Now let's look at the answer choices and see which one matches that main idea. Option A says, the government should control all labor systems. That doesn't fit. The amendment isn't talking about job systems or government control. It's focused specifically on banning slavery. Option B says, Congress must approve all punishments. That's not mentioned anywhere in the amendment. Option C says, slavery and involuntary servitude are banned unless as punishment for a crime. That matches exactly what the amendment says. It's a clear and accurate summary of the main idea. Option D says, states have the final say in slavery laws. That's not correct either. This is a federal amendment. It applies to the entire country, not just individual states. So the correct answer is C. Slavery and involuntary servitude are banned unless as punishment for a crime. Using the graph, when the total U.S. population in 1860 was about 31 million, what was the percentage of enslaved population? This is a great example of a data interpretation question on the GED Social Studies test. These types of questions often require you to read a graph, pull out the right numbers, and use a bit of math to find the answer. To solve this, we use the formula for finding a percentage. Percentage of enslaved population in 1860 is equal to the number of enslaved population in 1860 over the total U.S. population in 1860 times 100%. We use the graph to find the number of enslaved population. Looking at the bar for 1860, you'll notice it rises to about 4 million. That tells us that in 1860, 4 million people were enslaved in the United States. We are also told from the question that total U.S. population in 1860 was about 31 million. So we will have 4 million over 31 million times 100%. The millions can cancel out. 4 divided by 31 times 100 is 12.9%, which is approximately 13%. The correct answer is therefore option C, 13%. Based on the graph, what conclusion can you draw about the effect of the 13th Amendment, passed in 1865, on the number of enslaved people in the United States? This is a great example of a data interpretation question, which is another key skill tested on the GED Social Studies exam. You're often asked to read a chart, graph, or visual, and use that information to draw a logical conclusion. Now let's take a close look at the graph. We see that in 1860, the enslaved population was about 4 million. Then in 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed. After that point, the graph shows a sharp drop, almost straight to zero by the time we get to 1870. The numbers remain close to zero through 1880. Let's use that information to evaluate each answer choice. Option A says, the enslaved population steadily declined over 5 years. That doesn't fit. The graph doesn't show a gradual decline, it shows a sudden drop after 1865. Option B says, the enslaved population increased briefly after 1865. That's not supported by the graph either. There is no increase after 1865. Option C says, the enslaved population dropped sharply to zero following the amendment. This is correct. This matches the graph exactly. After 1865, the enslaved population plummets to nearly zero, which aligns with the 13th Amendment banning slavery. Option D says, the 13th Amendment caused a temporary decrease in slavery, which later rose again. That's not correct. The graph shows the enslaved population stayed very low after the amendment. There was no rise again. So the correct answer is C. The enslaved population dropped sharply to zero following the amendment. Read the excerpt from George Walker Bush's inaugural address in 2001 and answer the following questions. It is the story of a new world that became a friend and liberator of the old, a story of a slaveholding society that became a servant of freedom. America, at its best, is a place where personal responsibility is valued and where every citizen can dream, work, and build a future of hope. What does the word liberator most likely mean in the phrase, a friend and liberator of the old. This question is a great example for testing your ability to understand key terms and phrases. Let's put G.W. Bush's 2001 speech in simpler words. Bush described America as the new world that helped its allies in the old world, especially Europe, to gain and protect their freedom. This was during major global events like World War I and World War II. So in this context, the word liberator means a nation that frees others from oppression and supports their fight for freedom. So what is Bush doing with this speech? He's using emotional and powerful language to inspire unity, highlight America's role in the world as a defender of freedom, emphasizing values like personal responsibility and urging civic duty. Now let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, a person or nation that frees others from control or oppression. That's correct. The word liberator comes from the root word liberty, meaning freedom. Bush's speech described America as a liberator, meaning it helped other countries gain and protect their freedom. So option A is the most likely answer. But before we conclude on which answer is correct, let's take a look at the other options. Option B says, a government that taxes its citizens. That's incorrect. A liberator is someone or something that frees people. Taxing citizens is a normal function of government, thus it's not related to freeing people or promoting liberty. Option C says, a soldier who invades foreign countries. That's not correct either. A soldier who invades is typically seen as someone who takes control, not someone who sets others free. Invasions are usually linked to aggression or conquest, not to freedom and liberation. Option D says, a country that isolates itself from world affairs. That's also incorrect. A liberator is active in helping others achieve freedom. Liberators get involved in international events to fight oppression. On the contrary, a country that isolates itself avoids involvement in global conflicts or alliances. It stays neutral or uninvolved and does not take action to free or support others. So the correct answer is A, a person or nation that frees others from control or oppression. Why is the second phrase from the excerpt considered an opinion? This question is a great example for testing your ability to distinguish between facts and opinions. Facts are statements that can be proven true or false. They are based on evidence, data, or historical records. They are objective, thus, not influenced by personal views or judgment. Whereas, opinions are statements that express beliefs, feelings, or judgments. They are subjective, thus, based on personal views. Let's put the second phrase of G.W. Bush's 2001 speech into simpler words. Bush is saying, America, at its best, is a country where people take responsibility for their actions, and where everyone has an opportunity to dream, work hard, and create a better tomorrow. The statement reflects the speaker's belief. It has no evidence provided or data cited. The statement also uses subjective words like best, valued, dream, and hope, which invite personal interpretation and make it possible for different people to agree or disagree. Now let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, it is based on law. That is incorrect. The statement does not refer to any specific law or legal document. It does not mention legislation, court rulings, or anything legally enforceable. Option B says, it reflects a personal judgment or belief. That is correct. This is because the phrase expresses Bush's personal views about America's ideals, not verifiable facts or legal guarantees. It expresses his belief in the values America should uphold, such as responsibility, hope, and opportunity. Option C says, it refers to a constitutional right. That's not correct. While the second statement talks about ideals like opportunity and hope, it does not mention any specific constitutional rights. There's no direct reference to things like freedom of speech, due process, or equal protection, which are constitutional rights. Option D says, it includes statistical evidence. That's also incorrect. The statement expresses beliefs and ideals, not data. There are no numbers, statistics, percentages, or studies mentioned, all of which are required for something to be considered statistical evidence. So the correct answer is B. It reflects a personal judgment or belief. Read the excerpt from a historical analysis. The impact of the Emancipation Proclamation, and answer the following questions. Some historians argue that the Emancipation Proclamation did little to actually free enslaved people, since it applied only to Confederate states still in rebellion. However, supporters of the proclamation point to its symbolic power and its role in shifting the purpose of the Civil War toward ending slavery. Which statement is best supported by evidence in the excerpt? This question is a great example to identify and evaluate claims and evidence used to support them. A claim is a statement or main idea that someone is trying to prove or argue. Evidence is proof or support used to show that a claim is true, usually through facts, examples, or data. Now let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, the Emancipation Proclamation legally ended slavery in all U.S. states. That's not correct. There is no evidence that backs this claim. The proclamation was applied only to Confederate states in rebellion. Option B says, the Emancipation Proclamation had only symbolic value and no legal impact. That's incorrect. It had symbolic value, but it also had legal impact. The proclamation was an official executive order issued by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. It had legal weight within the Confederate states it targeted. Option C says, the proclamation's reach was limited. That's correct. This claim is backed by evidence in the excerpts, which states that the proclamation applied only to Confederate states, showing its limited reach. Option D says, the proclamation caused Confederate states to immediately rejoin the Union. That's incorrect. There is no evidence that backs this claim. So the correct answer is C. The proclamation's reach was limited. After reading that the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to Confederate states in rebellion, what can you infer about the enslaved people in Union border states? This question is a great example of how to make inferences. It requires you to use clues and evidence in the passage to draw logical conclusions that are not directly stated. An inference is a smart guess you make based on the clues in what you read and what you already know. It's more of figuring out the answer by putting pieces together. Now, let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, they were freed immediately by the proclamation. That's incorrect. The Emancipation Proclamation only applied to Confederate states still in rebellion. It did not apply to the Union border states. So we can infer that enslaved people in Union border states were not freed immediately by the proclamation. Option B says, they remained enslaved. That's correct. From the information given, we can see that the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to Confederate states that were in rebellion. There is no mention of the Union border states. So we can infer that enslaved people in Union border states were not freed by the proclamation and remained enslaved until the 13th Amendment ended slavery for all in 1865. Option C says, they had already escaped to the North. That's incorrect. While it's possible that some enslaved people escaped, the excerpt does not give enough information to infer that this happened. The passage only tells us that the proclamation applied only to Confederate states in rebellion. It doesn't mention anything about people escaping to the North. Option D says, they were moved to southern states. That's incorrect. The excerpt gives no information to support this idea, so we cannot infer that this happened based on the passage. So the correct answer is B. They remained enslaved until the 13th Amendment. Read the excerpt from Frederick Douglass's speech. What to the slave is the 4th of July, 1852, and answer the following questions. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery. How does Frederick Douglass use language in this excerpt to strengthen his argument? This question is a good example of recognizing how an author uses words to persuade or give information. You'll often be asked to understand how a speaker or writer uses tone, word choice, or point of view to support their argument and connect with their audience. Let's put Douglass's 1852 speech in simpler words. Douglass is saying that while Americans are celebrating freedom on the 4th of July, enslaved people are still living in suffering and injustice. He calls the celebration a sham and says the talk of liberty and equality is hollow mockery. These are strong, emotionally charged words meant to highlight the hypocrisy of celebrating freedom while slavery still exists. So how does he strengthen his argument here? He's not using legal claims. He's not citing data. He's using emotional and powerful language to make the audience feel how wrong it is to celebrate liberty while denying that liberty to others. Now let's go through the answer choices. Option A says, he provides legal evidence to prove that slavery is unconstitutional. That's not correct. There's no legal argument being made in this excerpt. Option B says, he uses statistical data to show how many people are still enslaved. That's also incorrect. There are no numbers or data mentioned. Option C says, he describes historical events from the Revolutionary War in detail. That's not in the excerpt either. Option D says, he uses emotional and powerful language to expose the hypocrisy of celebrating freedom while slavery exists. That's exactly right. He's using emotional appeals and strong word choices to make his point. So the correct answer is D. He uses emotional and powerful language to expose the hypocrisy of celebrating freedom while slavery exists. The pie chart below shows some specific racial groups and their representation in the 117th Congress during the 2021 to 2023 term. These racial groups represent the minority, which consisted of 124 members out of the 535-member U.S. Congress. They amount to 23.2%. According to the chart, which group had the highest representation? This is a great example of a statistics question in a GED Social Studies test. You will be given a chart, graph, or table to examine and spot patterns, compare values, or do a little bit of math to find the answer. Let's take a look at the chart. When you look at the chart, you see that each slice shows a percentage share of congressional members for the various racial groups, which are the Black racial group with 46.9%, the Hispanic racial group with 35.9%, the Asian racial group with 13.3%, and the Native American with 3.9%. So, when we look at our answer choices, option A, the Black racial group, is option with the highest representation of 46.9%. So the correct answer is A, Black racial group. If political parties increased outreach to Black communities and Black representation rose, the party outreach would be which type of variable? This question tests your ability to identify independent and dependent variables. You will be asked to examine short readings, charts or graphs, and determine the type of variable present. An independent variable is what you change or the cause in an experiment or study, whereas a dependent variable is what changes or an effect of an independent variable. So from the question, if political parties increased outreach to Black communities, that action becomes the change happening or the cause. That makes the party outreach an independent variable. And the result of this increased outreach which is the rise in black representation, becomes the effect, hence the dependent variable. We can conclude that the party outreach is an independent variable. So the correct answer is C, independent. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more. Check out our other GED videos on YouTube. Don't forget to visit ultimateged.com for more exclusive content, a GED social group, complete GED math course, and take a free test.